we all know that if you don't get enough sleep, it could actually impair your cognitive abilities. But what does it do to memory formation, and what does it do when it comes to remembering things accurately? Well, a team of researchers from UC Irvine and Michigan State University wanted to question just that. And their hypothesis was that if you get less than 5 hours of sleep, then you're likely to develop false memories, which is really, really fascinating. So this study was published in the Journal of Psychological Science. And in preliminary studies, they found that sleeping for 5 hours or less a night was linked to false memory formation. So they wanted to continue experimenting with this. They wanted to continue figuring out whether or not this was true. And so they conducted another study. They used 104 participants, and they put them in 4 different groups. Now, in one group, you had a bunch of individuals who got to have a full night of rest, and another group of individuals who didn't get to sleep at all that night. Before the night, they were shown a series of photos of a crime taking place, okay? Second group was the same situation. You have a group that gets to sleep through the night and a group who does not get to sleep through the night. And then in the morning, that is when they're shown the crime pictures, okay? Now, here's what happens afterwards. The next part of the experiment required all participants to read narratives of eyewitness statements that gave different information to what the crime photos showed. For example, one of the statements said a thief put a stolen wallet in the pocket of his pants when the photo showed he put it in his jacket. Participants were then asked to recall what was shown in the photos. So this is really interesting. Did the lack of sleep have any impact on what they recalled from the photos? And here's what they found. The researchers found that the group who looked at the photos, read the narratives, and attempted to recall the photos after staying awake all night were more likely to say that the details in the narratives were present in the photos, indicating false memory formation. However, the participants who looked at the photos prior to staying awake all night were found to be no more likely to report false memories than the groups that were allowed to fall asleep.
Right. So this has a couple of important implications. Unrelated to the story, I was just reading about the Innocence Project, because they were one of our Turks of the Year. And they had all these people who were exonerated from death row, including 7 this year alone. Mm-hmm. And in the exonerations historically that they have gotten, which is over 300, there's so many accounts where people will even confess to a crime.
Yep.
Because even though they didn't do it, right? Because of enormous pressure and different tactics that the cops use, et cetera, right? But also there's a ton of false eyewitness testimony. They think the guy did it when the guy didn't do it, right? And they say, oh yeah, it was him. And there's also small issues or large issues about how the races have harder time distinguishing within the other race. Mm-hmm. So white people will have a hard time telling black people apart. Black people will have a hard time telling white people apart, et cetera. But just when somebody says, I saw it happen, the natural human reaction is to give them all the credit in the world. Say, well, right. That's it. They saw it happen. Mm-hmm. But you have to understand there are a lot of factors that go into that, including something as simple as maybe they didn't get enough sleep.
I know, it's amazing. There are so many different factors that play a role in someone's testimony. What I thought about when I read about this study was enhanced interrogations.
That's a great point,
right?
Yes.
So if you are interrogating detainees and you're doing so by depriving them of sleep, what's the likelihood of them giving you a real confession or real information that you're looking for, factual information? First of all, a lot of times they're just going to tell you what they want to hear or what you want to hear because you're torturing them. But in some cases, they might not recall things accurately because you're depriving them of sleep. So
yeah, and if you wanted false testimony, that's a great way of getting it. And that's why some of these guys were deprived of sleep for 4 or 5 days. I think one guy 7 days in a row. And that's just not human, and there's only so much you can stand. And so a lot of people make the mistake of thinking that we did the torture to get accurate information. But in reality, part of the information that we got was inaccurate, and we wanted it. It's the story I always tell about one of the guys, al-Libi in Egypt. They threatened to bury him alive, and he said, fine, Iraq did it. Knowing that Iraq didn't do it in terms of 9/11. And Cheney was like, yes, that's what we needed to hear. Off we go to Iraq, right? So if you want false testimony, what do? You torture people, and you don't let them sleep. Now, these are known facts, right? And then you get false testimony that's convenient for your purposes.
Yeah.
Whether it's to convict someone who might or might not be guilty or to go into a war. So it has a ton of implications. Now, the other part of this story is that, dude, get some sleep.
I know.
Okay, I mean, not getting sleep messes you up in 1,000 different ways.
It messes with your metabolism, it messes with your immune system, it messes with a lot of things. And now I mean, I always knew that it messed with you cognitively, but to form false memories is crazy.
Yeah, and so like some people are on a rampage about you got to get 8 hours of sleep and stuff like that. And I joke around sometimes saying like, it's easier to get all that sleep after you're a millionaire, right? And not a lot of us have that luxury, and some people got to work 2 jobs, and they got to work hard, et cetera. I know that. Having said that, 5 hours is too little, man. That's not what we're built for. Look.
How many nights have you had 5 hours of sleep or less? Many.
Sure, but look, I don't know. Everybody's body's different. For me, I need about 6.5. I mean, there's been many, many nights where I've had less by necessity. We live in that world, right?
Yeah.
But for me, I need at least 6.5 to function in a halfway decent way, right? Mm-hmm. Everybody's got their own sense of what you need. But get some sleep, man. If you deprive yourself of that for a long enough period of time, you can do some serious damage to your health, okay? So that stuff is real.